Today, I want to speak about how I live in a Western country as a Muslim. So I live in the UK. I live in London. I live in Tower Hamlets, which is a borough which is mainly Muslims. Um, and also mainly Bengali. So there's a mixture of culture and religion, and that's what I see day to day. I have Muslims surrounding me in Tower Hamlets. Just to establish, there is about a mosque every 10-minute walk from me. So I think that's definitely one of the perks of living in London. In Tower Hamlets, at least, I think this is the borough which has the most mosques, especially within a walking radius. And that leads me onto the topic of this video, and onto my first point. So how do I live in a Western country as a Muslim? The first thing I do to stay grounded is attend the mosque. This is done as much as possible. If I can attend the mosque at least once a day, it gives me that peace and that tranquility in my heart, that sakina. Of being around other Muslims. Especially because it's a Western country, it means you're surrounded by non-Muslims. And yes, I might live in a Muslim area, but you can't inherently outwardly see if someone is a Muslim. Because we don't dress with thobes or the shamar or anything, you can't assume that anyone is a Muslim. And that's something that I learned from university. That I used to think that every brown person was a Muslim. Very silly of me. But that's how I grew up, and that's why I always thought. But then when I went to university, I learned that there's Christians, like Sri Lankan Christians, and there's Indian Christians, Hindus, etc., etc. But my assumption was that they were always Muslim, and this is just because of the place that I grew up in. In school, I was always surrounded by Muslims who are all brown. Um, but anyway, coming back to the main point of how do I stay grounded, you have to go to the mosque. The mosque is your lifeline, it's your everything. A mosque is the community hub. And where I live, it doesn't feel like it. I feel like the mosque can do more. There's always potential for more. But because they're not funded by the government like Saudi Arabia, and the Muslim countries, they don't really have that much power and influence. And obviously there are rules and regulations, but I always feel like the mosque can be doing more because what they essentially try to do is they try to induce demand. So they think that if the mosque can get bigger, more people, it will attract more people. And partly that does work, but at the same time, people always ask why are you constantly fundraising when at Fajr time the mosque doesn't pass more than two lines. But that's distracting me from the main point. The main point is that this mosque is going to connect you to Allah, developing your prayers, starting to pray sunnah, or if you don't pray 5 times a day, starting to pray 5 times a day. If you do pray 5 times a day, try to attend as much in the mosque, because this is where you build your community as well. A lot, and there is a da'if, a weak hadith that says, that's always stuck with me when I first heard it, and it is that the Prophet ﷺ said that if you see someone go to the mosque, bear witness that he is a person of faith. So the meaning of this is correct. Most of the time, if you go to the Muslim, then you can bear witness. If you see him, if you see the person consistently, then that they are Muslim, and they're trying to increase and develop themselves spiritually and try to become a better Muslim. And that's something that's going to help you, having those friendships and building those connections. Even if you don't speak to the people, seeing them every day will give you some peace in your heart that, no matter what I do in my life, I'm going to be connected to the mosque. And this could be any mosque, but it's always nice to have your own local mosque, because it's basically like a third space. And these non-Muslims, they love their third spaces. They love to go to a cafe or something and do their work there, or the gym or something like that. They love third spaces. So that leading into my next point, in terms of praying, if you one small change that I started doing which really helped my iman, was that I started to pray more on time. So because I obviously started attending the mosque, you pray in Jama'at. So this kind of forces you to, it forces you to make your whole day revolve around these timings. So you don't want to go outside past the prayer time. So if I'm going to my family's house, I don't really want to go at Maghrib time. I try to go before, or I try to go after, because you're trying to make that time for prayer. and having that connection with the mosque will help you mentally and spiritually and even physically, because you have to walk to the mosque, and even when you're praying, it's a physical activity, so it keeps your blood flowing. Um, the next thing that I want to speak about is that being with your family and friends. This is something that so many people have already said, but as I grow older, I kind of realized why family is much more important than friendship, because I feel like the younger generation, they always care about their friends more. Why? Because friends are the people that they see in school every single day, and they don't see their family as much, probably because the dad is working very hard trying to supply his family, and the mother is probably in the kitchen cooking all day, and then the siblings are the siblings, and they don't want anything to do with them. So that's why people, young children, they always feel connected the most to their friends, and it's something as adults that we kind of fail to see. We always try to say to the child, "Why don't you socialize with your family?" But at the same time, you don't give them any avenue. You don't say, "Okay, let's play a game or let's do this and let's do that." They just like to point the finger. The adults like to point the finger at the children, and expect them to make up their own game or something like that, just because they used to do it. But unfortunately now times have changed, and there's this generation Alpha, Gen Z, which is basically iPad kids. It's a completely different world than the world that our parents used to live in. So coming back to that main point of being with your family and friends, um, as I've grown up, family is definitely more important than friendship. But friendship is the people who you can really feel like you can be yourself around, because I read this thing where it said you have three personalities: one at work slash school, one with your family, and then one with your friends. And it's not that each of these personalities are separate. It's that all of these personalities make you, because you might feel different when you're with your friends, and that could be a good or bad thing, because some people might swear around their friends and they might have bad habits. But then why is it that when you're with your family you fix up these bad habits out of respect? So in terms of which one is the real you, both of them are the real you, because you pick and you choose the side that you want to show to your friends and family. And also at the same time, there's certain things that you can speak about with your friends and you can't speak about with your family because of the maturity and the development wise. But Islamically, um, what's going to help you is having a good family. If you don't have family, again, you can go back to my first point, which is the mosque. You build connections at the mosque. And if you don't have that, then you need to build your friendship through other places, because um, even if you think of it in a logic and rational way, praying in congregation, there's a reason why it was legislated. And if you think about it rationally, it gives you an opportunity to meet people. Because for me, I'm not a fan of meeting new people, but going to the mosque all the time and seeing the same people, you build up a connection. So whenever someone's not at the mosque, you always wonder, okay, maybe where were they that day? Even though I've never spoken to them in my entire life, I feel an attachment towards them, and I feel an attachment towards the mosque, of course. And that's going to help you spiritually, because at the end, it all comes down to your health, your mental, your physical health. Not just in this world, but in the next, because as Muslims, we're aiming for the hereafter, and it's something that a lot of Muslims kind of forget, because they try to build themselves up so much in this world that they forget that the real world is the next world and the hereafter, because that's forever. So coming to my final point, I want to say that the societies in Muslim countries are completely different. Um, Growing up in the West, there's a lot of fitna, there's a lot of trials and tribulations, which people in these Muslim countries, they don't see at all. So what I'm trying to say is that it's completely new trials, and me being a third generation immigrant, I'm seeing trials that my family has never seen before, and my family will never understand. Um, but coming back to that whole central idea of, as a Muslim, how do we tackle these issues? First of all, we have to acknowledge them, we have to address them. And then how do we tackle it? We tackle it through and this is a general statement, a blanket statement, but through the Quran and the Sunnah. And it's kind of tricky, because all of these contemporary scholars, yes, Islam does have the answer, but at the same time it's very tricky to apply it in our specific scenarios, because these scholars are from the East, they're from Saudi Arabia, they speak Arabic. How do they apply it to our context of growing up in the West? Because they, from what I've seen, they don't understand as much. But of course, Islam is perfect and it has an answer for everything. So what we do is we go to our mosque, we go to our local imams, and most of the time they have a very good answer for that. The final point, and this is the most important point, to stay grounded as a Muslim, is that I want you to realize that everything can be worship. So what I'm trying to say is that the first hadith of Imam al-Nawawi's 40 hadith, إنما الأعمال بالنيات, actions are defined by intention. So whatever your intention is, it defines your action. That's how you know the difference between praying and just standing and doing the actions, and that is what turns actions into worship. So what I'm trying to say, if I give an example of before you go to sleep, if you have that intention that I'm going to wake up for Fajr and I'm doing this as an act of ibadah, an act of worship to get closer to Allah, then you'll increase in reward, and that will make your sleep righteous, and you'll actually gain reward just for sleeping. And obviously don't forget to do all of your du'as. You can learn them from Fortress of the Muslim. It's a good book and it has all the du'as that you need. But this whole central point of something doesn't have to inherently necessarily be Islamic, but you can turn it into an act of worship just through your intention, and I think that's one of the beauties of Islam. So yeah, if you want to take anything from this video, take that one point, because this will keep you in remembrance of God, and remember that Allah is Sami'un Basir, Sami'un Alim. He hears and He sees everything, and He is the all-knowing, and Qadir, He is the all-powerful. So whatever you need, always ask Allah, because the avenue is always there, and Allah never sleeps. That's all I wanted to say today. Thank you for listening.